Hello, and welcome to the People Tested podcast with your host, Jack Tatar.
Hi, this is Jack Tatar. Thank you for joining us here on the People Tested podcast for July 2015. Today we will have two interviews. First, let's listen to my interview with Adam Avery, where I talk about my first book, Safe for Retirement, The 4 Keys to a Safe Retirement, and discuss what constitutes a safe retirement.
My guest today is Jack Tatar, who is CEO of GEM Research Solutions, which is a leading market research firm based in Pennington, New Jersey. He's also author of Safe for Retirement, and it's an interesting book and one that we're going to ask him a couple of questions. What I found most interesting about his book, though, is that somehow he managed to be Amazon's #1 best-selling retirement book in the personal finance and personal health categories. Yet his book isn't just about finances, pre- and post-retirement. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So my first question for you is, how do you become Amazon's #1 book in the personal finance and personal health category, but your book really isn't just about finances?
Well, I think it kind of shows the uniqueness of the book. I was actually very surprised when I explored writing the book that there really are no books out there about retirement beyond just financially based books. The book that I wrote is around not only just finance, but health and wellness, mental attitude, and staying involved. So it's rather unique, but in terms of categories, the only one that's close to retirement is personal finance. So I'm also in the personal health section as well, because I do think that there's a large element of health as well. But what's kind of funny is it kind of transcends these categories, and if you go to Barnes & Noble, you go to any bookstore, or you go into the retirement section, most of them are financial books. So that's just kind of where I got situated.
Let's talk a little bit about your holistic approach to all this. Now, you mentioned in your preface that you lost your mother and father. They were both retired, and you lost them in a 6-month period. And that was your main motivation, or was it market research that you did that brought you to the conclusion that there really was no book that kind of took a holistic approach to retirement?
Well, the reality is I do a lot of work with retirees and investors, and I've been doing that in my business for the last decade or so. And so I brought into a wealth of knowledge that I had around people who are retiring as well as people in retirement. But the impetus for writing it was I looked at the situation with my parents, and like you said, my mom passed away 6 months after my dad. You know, I talk to people and they say, well, that's kind of a common occurrence. And I said, well, why is that? So I started to look at how they lived in retirement, as well as things that I was hearing from retirees. I put my head down and really in an effort to kind of get through the grief and everything else with my mom, put my head down, and what I came out with was this book, which really incorporates things that I've learned from my parents' experience, along with the current research out there around retirees, and really the need to take a look holistically at retirement rather than just financially at retirement.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things, because in the book you talk about helping retirees and pre-retirees take care of their health, fill their free time, stay connected to their friends, create new friends, and stay positive when family and friends move away or die. So bring me through your book then. Let's break it down a little bit, go through some of the categories and why it's important to look at those categories.
Well, the first thing I go through, which as much as I say about financial, it's really a major part of retirement. You've got to have your financial ducks in a row. In fact, the first part of the book, we get very into having people sit down, roll their sleeves up, and go and take a look at your financial situation, speak to an advisor, or do it on your own, whatever, but get all the information together and understand what the financial implications are. And then also, once you've got that done, in a similar way that you've planned and gathered all that information, you've got to do the same thing for your health. I talk to people about getting out there and exercising, put together some exercise programs, taking a look at how you eat. A lot of time in the book is spent around proper diets and things of that nature. And then we also talk about, which is I think one of the most important things and overlooked things, which is the mental attitude. The reality is, as you retire, you're leaving friends, contacts that you had in the workforce, as well as when you're in retirement, you're going to lose friends and family. They're going to move on. They're going to pass away, things of that nature. You've got to deal with that. And then the last section is really, I think, one of the most important things that I learned from my parents is the need to stay involved, the need to do volunteering, stay in touch and involved with your family and what they need. It's a very, very key part to retirement. It's fighting those stereotypes of that grouchy old person on the couch not doing anything, and the need to go out there and explore the rest of the world and really make an impact in the world now with the free time that you have.
Well, you talked about, keeping in touch, and you also talk about using new technologies and social media to connect with others. Are you finding that more retirees are now getting involved with social media and using Skype to stay in touch with their family?
Absolutely. You mentioned Skype. Skype is huge. There are so many seniors I talk to, and they say, "Oh, my grandchildren are growing up, but I get to see them once a week. I make a Skype phone call," and they love it. So basically, seniors aren't fighting the technology. Seniors are looking at this as a way to stay connected to their family, and in fact, play with technologies that their grandchildren and their children are using. So Skype is huge. Facebook, we see a lot of information on Facebook about how the largest growing demographic in Facebook are the seniors who are getting on there. And what they're doing is they're staying connected to current friends, people they used to work with, and they're making these connections with people from school, people from different programs, from different work. And it's really bringing a lot into the senior's life to be able to connect with these other people. So rather than being at home and on your own, you now can use these technologies and connect. And one of the big parts of the book is connect with your family, connect with your friends. And obviously when you use tools like Skype and Facebook, you can do that type of thing.
The book is Safe for Retirement, and that's the number 4, Safe for Retirement, the 4 keys to a safe retirement. The author is Jack Tatar. The book can be accessed at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, both print and Kindle. Jack, before I let you go, if there was one central message that you would like readers to get out of your book, what would that be?
Well, I think the reality is I'd like you to think about retirement much more than just from the financial aspect. I think you have to, in much the same way as you plan financially for your retirement, you've got to have a plan for all of these other aspects. You've got to think about how you're going to keep your health. You got to think about how you're going to keep a positive attitude, and you got to think about how you're going to stay involved. But above all, enjoy your retirement, thrive in retirement. The book is all about building a safe retirement, and the safe retirement equates to a retirement where you're thriving, enjoying, and you're living the dreams that you've always wanted to have in retirement.
Author Jack Tatar, I greatly appreciate you taking some time out of your day to explain to our listeners what your book's about. I wish you success in the future. Take care, sir.
Adam, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. My book, Safe for Retirement, The 4 Keys to a Safe Retirement, is available on Amazon, or you can go to the People Tested website, which is www.peopletested.com. Next, I'd like to include part 1 of a moving interview I had done with Diana Denholm. Diana is the author of the Caregiving Wives Handbook. It's a book that she wrote about her experiences caregiving for her dying husband. This is part 1 of the broadcast. Part 2 will be in next month's podcast. I hope that you enjoy it. Today I have the pleasure of having Diana Denholm as a guest with me today. Diana is the author of the Caregiving Wives Handbook, Caring for Your Seriously Ill Husband, Caring for Yourself. Very successful book and a very revealing and telling book about Diana's experience in caregiving with her husband. And Diana's going to tell us about it, share with us the challenges and even some of the joys of caregiving. And it's a pleasure to have you with me, Diana. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to join you. Caregiving is such an important topic. We have over 60 million caregivers in the United States now. So as you're listening now, you may not be a caregiver yourself, but I'm sure in some way caregiving is affecting your own family, even if it's simply that one of your friends is a caregiver. So the information that you're going to learn today is going to be invaluable, perhaps for you at some point, but if not at this time, it certainly will be useful for a friend of yours.
That's a great point. It's a great point, Diana, because the reality is caregiving touches so many of us in so many different ways, sometimes directly and sometimes just from family members or friends even. So as we get older, typically we end up encountering it, as you mentioned. Can you tell me a little bit, Diana? I mean, I love your book. I love what you did in your book. I think it's a very brave book and very similar to kind of what I did, taking really as a
personal challenge, tragedy, whatever, and kind of reworking it into something that I think has ended up helping a lot of people. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about what caused you to create this book and a little bit about the creation of the writing of this book.
Absolutely. And before I do, I just want to emphasize that even though it's the Caregiving Wife's Handbook, all of the information is very applicable to men who are caring for wives, for, I hate to call them children, but children who are caring for their parents, the baby boomers who are now taking on that role. Well, for me, this began actually when I was about 2 years old, when my father had a heart attack, which he survived, but he had many medical problems, including cancer that went to his brain that killed him years later. But all this time I watched my mother go through this, and I saw her shut down. And I can still see it in my mind, the drama, the trauma, on and off for about 40 years. But here's the important point. I could only see it through my eyes, not hers. So I had no idea of what she could possibly be going through. Because here she is caring for the person she's in love with and losing him at the same time. You know, how do you do that? Well, finally, I got it. Finally, I saw it through her eyes because it happened to me. My love was diagnosed with colon cancer with very little chance of survival, and that was just about a month after he had asked me to marry him. And he got through it, but a year after that, a year he wasn't even supposed to survive, he developed congestive heart failure. And from then on, I spent every single night listening to his heartbeat and wondering if he'd make it through the next day. And without realizing it, I became my mother. Same pain, same challenges. Well, next we moved to California so he could get a heart transplant, but that really was the beginning of a series of more disasters. Because after the heart transplant, his body began to fail him, and he had a laundry list of ailments, just to name a few: skin cancers, depression, sleep disorder, Parkinson's, and kidney failure. And he ended up on dialysis as well. You know, ambulance rides, heart failures, falls, bleed out, all sorts of traumas. And somewhere along the way, he decided he'd had enough. And it took him about 6 months to do it, but he decided to go off dialysis. And he went off dialysis knowing that he would die within 5 to 10 days. And he died in 5. With all of my experience as a medical psychotherapist, I was never really prepared for anything like this. And the worst part was that I had to blaze my own trail through 11 and a half years because there was nowhere to turn for answers. So because of that, I decided to do everything I could not to let anybody else go through anything like this, because there was no place you could find the roadmap to get through this so you could keep any semblance of your sanity or any semblance of yourself. You know, and what about survival? You know, a lot of caregivers become sick themselves. Some commit suicide, others become objects of abuse, and some become abusers themselves. But this doesn't have to happen. In the Caregiving Wife's Handbook, it's a wellspring of hope for the marriage and the life of a caregiver. Or if it's, you know, caring for your parent, for your life and for your relationships during this time. It's about making life work while your loved one's health is falling apart. That's what it's all about. This is about hope so that your life and your love and your life and your relationships do not have to be over.
It's a very, very important point that as we get older and we start dealing with illnesses related to loved ones, and your story is so poignant and so important for everyone to hear. One of the things that I found with retirees is that as they encounter these challenges and these illnesses and ultimately these deaths of their loved ones, they fall into a depression and they run into issues of their own. I saw that happen with my own parents. How did you kind of deal with handling your own emotions and your own feelings of perhaps as they dip closer to depression and just maintaining your own semblance of normality and ability to live and ultimately thrive through these circumstances?
Well, one of the advantages that I had in being a therapist is that I know, and you'll read this over and over again in the handbook, and also I suggest people go to my website, caregivingwife.com, because all these hints and articles and information is there as well. that emotions are neither good nor bad, they just are. So I knew that. But for other people, you have very, very strong emotions. You meet Kathy and Craig in the Handbook, and let me share you a little bit about their story. They're 75. Kathy and Craig have been married for about 48 years. And money's tight, and Kathy still works, and she's a delicate little lady. Craig has some limitations from Parkinson's, but he's a big, athletic He-Man kind of guy. But he's got a really booming voice, and he often directs it at Kathy. Well, he's the love of her life, but his usual moodiness and meanness got worse when he got sick. Well, Kathy's angry because Craig's friends offer to help him, and he turns them down. Instead, he expects her to wait on him hand and foot while he screams at her. He expects her to be his servant and be the sole moneymaker of the family. So to make matters worse, while she's off working long, hard hours, he manages to go to the baseball field with his buddies. So when she prepares his meals, he gets in her way, then something falls and spills or breaks, and he has a fit and threatens to pack and move out. So as many of you find, you're trying your best, and it isn't appreciated, and your loved one just makes it worse. And this is where some of the depression comes in, because depression often is considered to be suppressed anger. But her stress and anger now spill over into everything she does. It causes her problems at work. It affects her care for Craig. And in their house, it's stony silence, but that's only interrupted when they yell at each other. So she delays giving him meals. She cooks what she knows he hates, and she throws plates at him when he complains about it. But sometimes she wishes he would move out, and sometimes she wishes he'd just hurry up and die. But most of all, and this is important for the caregiver, she wonders what became of the sweet lady she used to be. She doesn't like who she's become, and it frightens her. Her depression, her anger, all of these emotions just frighten her. But she learned, as I said before, that there is hope, that her life and her marriage do not have to be over, that she does have options and choices, and she learned to understand her strong emotions, because her feelings are common for caregivers. Sometimes you feel guilty because you have bad thoughts, and sometimes you feel guilty because you have happy thoughts. Yet this inner dialogue, this conversation that, we all have this in our mind. We talk in our mind. They used to think we were crazy if we did, but now they know it's okay. And you talk with yourself, and that helps you survive because it allows you to let off some steam. And it keeps you from screaming things out or acting on them, because emotions are neither good nor bad, they just are. But too much pent-up anger or too many disturbing thoughts create negative outcomes and steal your energy. So there are many ways to release the anger that you can learn in the handbook. Some of it will be writing down all the things, that you really would like to just, blast your loved one with. Why are you doing this? What's the matter with you? You smell, you're lazy, you're this, you're that, you're a hypochondriac. And you write these down, get them out of your system. And then rather than suffering in silence or having a confrontation as your only options, learned communication is going to be your answer, because it isn't just talk. You can learn to compassionately and effectively communicate your concerns with your loved one. Because while it is your job to keep your loved ones safe, if they aren't able to, it is not your job to make them happy. Only they can do that. But if you sense your emotions are out of control, you need to get help before you threaten yourself or somebody else. So some people may need to go for therapy if their depression is too severe. Some people may need to consider medications. Very often, one good fix for depression is physical activity, where you get the natural biochemicals going in your brain and in your body that literally will make you feel better. But mainly to know that emotions are neither good nor bad, they just are. And in the Caregiving Wife's Handbook, there's a whole section on emotions and life in the guilt factory, with methods and tools for managing them so that your life is not destroyed, that your life can become much more loving, much more peaceful for you.
This whole point about communication is very important. And the thing that I think about when you mention the story about this couple is there an opportunity?
I'm a big advocate of trying to speak earlier rather than later about issues of end of life and even retirement-based issues and things that you might encounter. Is there an opportunity to discuss between a married couple or even family members bringing in the children? Is there an opportunity to talk about the challenges of caregiving well before they happen, so that there's some expectation, there's some ability to involve people in this as it comes along? I mean, what have you found has been the best time or the best way to perhaps bring this up, the whole challenge of caregiving? Do you have to bring it up when it happens, or can you bring it up even prior to that and try and involve the family and both spouses in understanding, if this does happen, here's the challenges that we have to deal with, and here's some decisions that we need to make?
The answer is all of the above. What you're saying is absolutely excellent. One of the things that I recommend for everybody is to establish expectations. First and foremost, get on the same page as the ill person in terms of expectations for everyone involved in your care. If you're the primary caregiver, you need to discuss and agree on what you'll expect of each other and what you're willing to do and not do, and that can be about the type of care, who will perform it, the legal and financial matters, household management, visitors, sleep, sex, and intimacy. There's no limit to that. And absolutely, if you can do it ahead of time, do. And then you will also need to do it as time goes on. With my husband having been ill for 11 and a half years, things changed, issues changing. As you spoke about some end-of-life issues, there were so many times that he was facing death and we thought he wasn't going to make it another month. We made funeral plans time and time again and changed them and modified them. I live in Florida. The burial was going to be up north. That there were some time constraints on that. What do you do when the ground is frozen and you have to wait for it to thaw to do a burial? So there were many modifications. And it's not so much a matter of when you bring these things up. I mean, that's important. But where people have difficulty, two places. One is they don't know that they can or should raise issues. And the second is they don't know how. There are so many of these things. Let me give you a little example here about communication. You probably remember the O. Henry story, The Gift of the Magi. About the couple that had very little money and wanted to get Christmas presents for each other. And Della's long flowing hair was her pride and joy. Jim's gold pocket watch was his. And Della cut her hair and sold it to buy the watch fob for Jim. Jim sold his gold watch to buy beautiful combs for Della's hair. It's an enchanting love story, and it's really one about selflessness, what they did for each other. But it also suggests how a lack of communication can lead to disastrous results. So this reminds me of Kathy and Craig, one of the couples you meet in the handbook. It was obvious that Craig's death was coming very soon. But Kathy and Craig never even discussed the possibility of it or anything related to it. She thought at one point he knew it would happen, but he just never discussed it with her. So not having effective communication, she didn't know if she should bring it up or how or when, so she said nothing. She knew he wanted to beat the cancer, and she thought if she even started to talk about it, he'd think she didn't believe he was going to make it. Now, he never mentioned it to her because he didn't want to upset her. So they were doing the same loving gestures like, Jim and Della being selfless, except that it left Kathy with no knowledge of finances, no information about legal matters, no plans for a funeral, and with a great deal of stress, so much so that she had a heart attack shortly after Craig died. And more than 6 years after his death, she said, I wish we had talked about these things, many things, but it's too late now.
Right.
But you don't have to have that happen. So what you can do, some of the steps will be to write down for your eyes only all of the concerns that you have. And in the Caregiving Wife's Handbook, there's a 24-question planning guide to help you come up with prompts for this. And then you start to determine which of these issues or things to discuss with your loved one. Then you're going to learn some communication tools on how to broach this with somebody. I mean, you don't want to just, walk up to them and say, hey, it's time to talk about your funeral plans. What we want to do is to learn to use I statements. I'm very concerned about your funeral plans, and I'd like to set up a time when we could talk about that. Would Tuesday or Thursday be better for you? Giving a closed-end option on that, so that they, if you say, when can we speak, the answer might be never. Or if you walk up to someone, particularly to a man, and say, we need to talk, he's going to run.
Right.
That scares most men, and justifiably so. They know they're in trouble. So it's, honey, I really am concerned about the funeral plans, and I'd like to sit down and talk about this. Can we do this Tuesday or Thursday? And then before you have that conversation, you kind of have a sense in your mind of the things that you want to discuss and perhaps some outcomes that you'd be looking for. Then you create a setting, find a setting that'll be conducive to the conversation. If there's a place where you normally talk to one another that works, you use that. But if, we don't want to go up to our husband who's watching a football game and say, honey, it's time to talk about your funeral plans. Right. It's not going to be well received. So we have to use some common sense in that. And then when we have that discussion, and this is really, really, really critical stuff, this is collaboration. We are not in an antagonistic situation here. We want to collaborate so that we can come up with expectations together. And you were speaking of the expectations, and that's what this is all about. So we create the time to have that conversation. We create the setting for it. We approach it in a way that's going to work and in a setting that will work, and we end up with an outcome of some usable agreements. And then life is going to be easier. Over the course of the illness, new topics will come up, and topics that were old ones may need to be modified. So it's an ongoing process.
You can get Diana's book, The Caregiving Wife's Handbook, on Amazon. Thank you very much for listening this month to the People Tested podcast. I invite you to listen next month when we will have part 2 of Diana's interview regarding her book, The Caregiving Wife's Handbook. Thank you for listening. As always, please visit our website, www.peopletested.com. Thank you.